This is Gamer Weekly, bringing you the latest of what the video game scene has to offer. On today's show, I have Chris Park of Arcen Games, and we're going to talk about their game, In Case of Emergency, Release Raptor. All right, and welcome to Gamer Weekly, the show that happens on a weekly basis, and it's about video games. And if you say that it doesn't happen on a weekly basis, you are a complete liar. And why do you know what goes on behind the scenes? Just stay out of there. With me today is Chris Park from Arcen Games.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem. We totally weren't having a conversation before that to lead up to this, but, you know, it's whatever. Who needs to know that? Thank you so much for coming on to the show. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And you have a new game that you are working on. It is called In Case of Emergency, Release Raptor.
Yep, that's right. That one's headed to early access soon, and about a week. And yeah, I'm real excited about it. It's our first 3D game, so that's been a big shift since February or so, but it's coming out really well, I think. So,
and I actually got to play the E3 build of it, courtesy of you guys. Once again, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say, honestly, one of the best parts of playing the game is, besides playing a dinosaur, the jumping mechanic and just how crazy high you can jump up in that game. It's like, obviously, Velociraptor is going to be jumping 2 floors, and when you see that robot, you're like, all right, here we go, and just immediately attack it. So definitely a lot of fun. What exactly made you guys want to do a game like this?
Well, for me, I mean, I've always been an enormous fan. I mean, I saw Jurassic Park, when I was in elementary school, and I'd just been reading the book, and then it was like, hey, they're making a movie, and it was like, oh my God, they're making a movie with dinosaurs? This is crazy. And so, that I think had everybody pretending to be either a Velociraptor or a T-Rex after that. And, I was in the Velociraptor camp, and there was a really cool Sega Genesis game that came out around then. They actually made 2, but hardly anybody knows what the second one, Jurassic Park games where you could be the either the Raptor or you could be Alan Grant as a 2D side-scroller. And that was just super fun, and that's been something that's kind of been in the back of my mind forever. And nobody's ever made, a game that lets you really be the Raptor like that. So there was just kind of a random stroke of inspiration looking at some Unity assets and so forth, where I was like, hey, I bet I could make that work, and that would be a really cool game to do as kind of a smaller, more focused project. So gave it a shot, and the prototype was promising. It's just like, all right, I'm in, doing this.
And so is there going to be a storyline that goes on with this game?
Yeah, I mean, we have our overall Arcenverse, basically, which this is our 10th game, I believe. Yeah, 10th. We've got one other one that's had a year of development that's not out yet, but that's Stars Beyond Reach. It's a strategy game. But out of those 11 games, about 7 of them, I want to say, all take place in kind of the same universe. And so chronologically earliest, Bionic Doo's a 2D tactical turn-based roguelite that we have. Basically the machines are taking over cities, and you get in mechs and you're fighting the machines, and they're really buggy, and it's actually pretty funny how buggy they are, and you actually use that to your advantage. It makes kind of puzzle levels with that. And so that's the earliest thing. And then eventually a few decades later or so, then hits this game where they're like, okay, most of people have left the Earth, they've fled, and there's some poor people that are left, and there were these genetic experiment raptors that were left behind, and you know, machinery is of no use because the AIs have taken over all of it. They finally got a little less buggy, and so, well, let's try genetic dinosaurs. They're not going to hurt anybody. There's nobody there to hurt. Hopefully, it'll hurt robots. And so, in case of emergency, they let out the raptor, and hopefully, the raptor can smash up a bunch of machines and save the few people that are left on Earth. Everybody else left and went out into the wider galaxy, and most of the machines did as well. And then about 800 years later, you get the setting for AI War, Fleet Command, which excuse me, which is our most popular title, the RTS game that we came out with in 2009, our first title. And then there's a variety of other ones that go. Our most recent game prior to this one is actually the most distant in the future, Star Wars Rogue, and same universe, but like a few billion years after this one.
So are you planning on adding things from your previous games into this game?
We have some nods for sure, and one of the things that we're doing is I love working in 3D because there's a lot of things that I can do now that I never could do working in 2D, and so we have these little monitors and TV screens and stuff that are around, right? And so one of the things that among some other Easter eggs that we're hiding in those, we'll have little like kind of title screen shots of a number of the titles, and then little bits of some notable music, not necessarily either the theme music or the ending music or whatever else that's kind of in there. So there's little Easter eggs like that, and then there's other storyline bits and pieces as well. I think that's mostly it because mechanically there's not a whole lot to pull in, although some of the AI in this takes some nods from some of what we've done in the past.
And so what do you guys want to add into, because you said that you were putting the game into early access, so I mean you guys are going to be working on the game even longer. What are some of the elements that you were wanting to add into the game later on that you guys have like thought about at least?
Well, my thing is having a big variety of robots to fight because I feel like that's where a lot of the variety actually comes from in how you play. And so having really large robots that you can jump on, kind of like a raptor jumping on a T-Rex, basically, and then have a dismemberment system that we've already gotten working, where you can jump up and knock pieces of them off. That's something that going to continue fleshing out, and then different types of attacks that the robots have, and different shields on some of them and so forth. Some of that will make it in prior to early access. Some of that will be shortly after. Obviously, other environments as well is something, because that's again something I'm really enjoying in 3D is the fact that there's so much more of a feeling of space, a feeling of place. And so, I don't just want to be a raptor that runs around in industrial environments or, labs. That's fun. And I really enjoy that. And that's fitting for the start of the story. But I really want to get to, having raptors running around in apartment buildings or raptors running around inside your house, various things like that, where you've got like a suburban neighborhood, that sort of thing. And I'm not sure how well some of that will play out in terms of like a suburban neighborhood, because you have to make the levels feel right for a raptor, or if the ceilings in the hallways are too low and too narrow and things like that, you have no room to dodge the robots, and you feel awkward and it's not a fun experience. Having a little bit of that just to make it go, wow, I'm this big dinosaur. Yeah, that could be fun, but you can't base a whole level around that. So we've got a variety of different things I'm going to, experiment with and see which ones feel best. But to some extent, that's kind of part of the point of early access is seeing what people resonate with. And if people are like, I love this, I'd love to see more variety in this particular area, then that's something that I can, drive towards, because a lot of times I've done that in post-release. We're hitting a point with this one where I feel like, well, this is already fun. Why not get more feedback early rather than later?
Right. Something that when I was playing the E3 build, I would have really liked it if there was like some kind of almost like a stomp mechanic. Like
there actually is.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
If you jump up in the air and do a kick in the air, then it'll do a stomp. If you do a kick while you're on the ground, then he leaps up a little bit. She, he, whatever. Clever girl. It's got to be she.
Yeah, definitely.
But if you're in the air, then you can hit the kick button and you'll go down. And yeah, because I was finding that too, where it was like Cat Mario from Super Mario 3D World. I was like, I want that sort of thing, but not quite at such an angle. I want to get right over and then blam down.
Right.
But yeah. So more ground pound, I guess. But
everything ground pounds. Absolutely, just a whole level of ground pounding robots.
Yeah.
I'm expecting a lot of Jurassic Park references in the game now too. So you're gonna have to put that into the final build. Is just the Jurassic Park reference level.
I'm gonna be very careful with what I do there, because I don't want to get involved in any sort of legal things. But
we'll put it in quotations. Jurassic Park.
Yeah, Jurassic Park.
Yeah, what is Jurassic Park? I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
Coincidence.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So, are you guys wanting to maybe like incorporate multiplayer as well into the game?
It's something that people have brought up, and it's a possibility. There are a number of potential hurdles with it. It is something that I do want to explore, using some of the more modern networking libraries that are out there. In the past, for the most part, we've always rolled our own in terms of networking code, and that can work pretty well. But there are, with a 3D action game in particular, there's just there's a lot of complexity with the prediction and some of the other kind of latency correction bits. And so I would want to use one of the other existing libraries for that. And then you run into issues of, well, how synchronous is physics, for instance, because, smashing things to bits is definitely a big part of this game. But then you've got a lot of little bits that are moving around. And, if the physics is deterministic, as we say, where it can be exactly the same on all the machines, well, that's one thing. If it's having a noticeable desynchronization between clients, then to what extent does that become a problem, and how can one correct for that? And just because of the amount of destruction that happens in this particular game, that is a concern of mine. And there may be ways to work around that for potentially like a multiplayer mode that things break a little bit differently in. Perhaps it's more synchronous in some fashion. So in other words, more or less, it comes down to a variety of technical challenges, mostly centered around the destruction aspect. And so if those are something that I can solve, then yeah, I would really enjoy doing multiplayer. But there has to be kind of a player following to the point where I'm like, okay, this is actually going to have like, not be like a major financial loss to spend all this time and all this effort on something technically complicated, and then people are like, eh, whatever, we're not really going to play it. So to some extent, the early access is a bit of a market study for us too, because we're starting out with the price only being like $5, and then we're going to be increasing that over the course of early access, based on people hopefully supporting it, and it getting more and more features. So to some extent, it's kind of like the more people that get it in early access, the more features just keep coming. And I look at it as kind of like stretch goals with Kickstarter, except you don't have to have people buying in at some ridiculous price for that to happen,
and crossing their fingers, and it's like, I hope that this has this in it.
Right, exactly. And so from my perspective, I'm not going to promise multiplayer, because that would be that would potentially get me in the same sort of pickle that a number of Kickstarter and early access folks have been in. Like, yeah, we're going to have blah, 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 all these promises. And then it's like, oh, well, it didn't perform like we want, so never mind. Here it's kind of like, all right, I want to give you a good value from day one, and then make that value better and better. And then, as appropriate, raise the price, but you still got it at whatever low price if you bought it day one. And so you're just, fortunate for being an early adopter, rather than being like, well, you might get burned being the early adopter. It's better to wait and see, because, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see.
I was about to say, because the first early access game that I bought was DayZ.
Oh my.
Yeah. See, you're just like, oh, yep. Know that pitfall of a game. Yeah, I saw people playing on YouTube. I'm like, oh, this looks so cool. Like, you get to do all these cool little things. Game's still broken. I've had that game for like 3 years now, and the game is still broken. So I will say that, like, have you received like any negative criticisms for going like the early access route, or has people been pretty welcoming on that?
I haven't had too much commentary on it overall. I've had some existing fans from our other games that were worried about a negative backlash, because there is a bit of a stigma against early access games. But at the same time, there was also a camp of people that were like, well, that's what makes sense, because we've taken a financial beating on some of our games, and where we build out this huge thing and release a $15 game, and then it, the market's not as interested as we thought. So it's like, oof, we could have built out $5 worth of that, and provide a value that people see and enjoy. And if and learn if the market is there before, I've invested, $100,000 or $400,000 or whatever into it, and take some giant loss. So, so overall, that's been a pretty, I think it's early days yet. It really depends. I think the fact that we're coming in at a low price and then planning on raising it versus coming in at kind of a final price or close to final price,
$30.
I think that's yeah, exactly. I think that has bought us some goodwill to some extent, versus the ones that are like, trust me, give me $30.
Because like, I feel like all the games that I have bought in early access, I think only one of them actually came out of it, and that was Don't Starve.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, cool. This was pretty solid. But it seems like you guys are trying to do something different than like the other early access games, where it's like, oh, we've got zombies and a crafting thing and an open world, and you can do whatever you want in this multiplayer open world apocalyptic game. And it's like, we got a game about dinosaurs and you smash robots.
Yeah.
It like that sounds like something that will actually work out, instead of like, because you guys aren't you guys aren't promising the world these people. It's like, look, this is what we got. It seems more real than like the other early access people that I have seen in the past.
I hope so. And we've got a track record of putting out successful games for 7 years now. So, we before early access was a thing, like before it had that name, we had done some public paid betas, is what we called it at the time, with really for A Valley Without Wind 1, and which one of our games, and then A Valley Without Wind 2 as well, which we did actually give free to all the Valley Without Wind 1 customers. And actually, the term, they rolled out the term early access like halfway through the public beta of Valley 2. And so it's kind of like, well, there's early access now. Whatever. We're in public paid beta, whatever. And we haven't really done it since then, because I found that we had a lot of media coverage and so forth for Valley Without Wind 1 for about 6 months during its alpha, and there were a lot of expectations about it, and then there's a lot of expectations during the beta and so forth. And it's a post-apocalyptic side-scroller, magic-focused Metroidvania open world thing. Is a very conglomerate sort of a game, and so very, very huge in terms of the amount of things that had to be added and so forth, and that takes away from focus versus where you get this huge breadth, but you can't really focus on the individual pieces as much as a game like Super Hot or something. They really focused on every mechanic and every level, and it's not an infinite game that you can play 80 hours of, but what you get is this really focused experience that's really fun, and that's kind of the model that I'm going for here, and that's a nice change of pace.
Like I would always prefer, honestly, just like a more condensed, more focused game. Something that's like, here is no fluff. This is the game. This is how it works. This is how you play it and everything. Instead of, here is 100 quests. Go kill 6 of the rat creatures to get the quest done for this, to do that. It's like, I'd rather just cut out the BS stuff and just go straight into like, this is what the strongest aspect of it is, and this is how confident we are in this.
Right. That's my feeling at this stage as well. And to some extent, some of my past titles have done that. Other ones, not as much. But it's something I've been, very much gravitating towards. And, as crowded as it is for the next title after this one, I do want to go to an open world game, not with crafting per se in the sense that a lot of them have, but I want to move to an open world game that doesn't follow a lot of the tropes that the existing ones have, because my wife and I loved playing 7 Days to Die during the beta, during their alphas 10 through 12 basically, and we loved playing Minecraft before that, but the more focused parts of the game, on, action and enemy variety and, truly having a sense of exploration, those sorts of things run out in that game. And there's instead this, if you're playing PvE anyway. So, I was like, well, I'm going to build a game like that myself then, instead. And I was working on that project actually, and I was like, you know what? While developing out tech for that, I could actually make this Velociraptor game, and there's a fairly wide side path that the Raptor game takes us on, because third-person controllers and cameras and all the various things that go into this, and having a non-humanoid as your main character are very complicated and very not involved in a first-person survival type game. But I really, I like a lot of what's going on with survival games, but I only like 20% of what's in a game, and then there's this other 80% that's like doing the 6 quests and stuff like you mentioned, or killing the 6 rats or whatever, and all these other sort of quests, and focus on a whole bunch of, in my opinion, the wrong kind of content or repetitive things, or okay, now it's going to take come over here and hack at this tree for 10 minutes or whatever, and it's like, I want to hit the tree and it explodes, and that's the end of the tree.
There you go.
You're on to your next thing. Yeah, I mean, actually, that's kind of the 7 Days to Die. They've got a bunch of XML files that you can easily mod. So, I mean, that's how we played. Where it's like, you hit a thing and it dies. Not the enemies, but you hit like a tree and it's like, blam, there goes the tree, blam, next tree, blam, next tree.
Does the tree explode?
No. Well, kind of. They have it so that it kind of makes an explosion-y sort of sound and then falls over. And that was pretty satisfying, actually. But yeah, I'm going to make it explode. Not with fire, just wood shrapnel, I guess.
Well, maybe with fire. That might happen. That's in the next build of the game. That's coming later. So just to wrap things up, Raptor thing. That was terrible.
I didn't even hear the pun until you said it.
So I didn't even realize that I did it until it happened. I was like, oh, man, terrible dad jokes. Ugh. So, wrap things up here. The game comes out in early access on July 5th.
That is very much the hope, yes.
Okay, cool. Well, hopefully it's on. You can look at the page itself on Steam, so check out their Steam page. You can see all the screenshots and the videos for it and all that good stuff as well. And Chris, thank you so much for coming on to the show. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Same here. Thanks for having me.
And thank you, everyone out there listening to Gamer Weekly. Goodbye. Thank you for listening to this week's Gamer Weekly. This is Justin Bannister signing off.